how do you transmit knowledge that's explicitly forbidden to be written down? Imagine a sacred tradition, right? Carefully preserved for centuries, just through oral transmission, person to person, and then suddenly it's facing the very real threat of extinction.
Wow.
What extraordinary lengths would a brilliant mind go to preserve that essence without actually violating the fundamental laws designed to protect it?
Yeah, that's not just hypothetical, is it? It sounds like a historical enigma, a real puzzle.
It really does. It sounds like the premise of some kind of epic philosophical thriller, you know.
It does, a dilemma of monumental proportions, really. Something that forced a profound rethinking of tradition itself.
Absolutely. And today, you and I, we're diving deep into that exact puzzle. We're exploring the ingenious, almost, you could say, deceptive methods of one of history's most profound thinkers, Maimonides.
Maimonides, right.
We're going to pull apart his legendary masterpiece, The Guide for the Perplexed. It's a book our source describes fascinatingly as an atypical and unclassifiable great work of genius.
Which is quite a description.
Isn't it? And it's a text that has captivated scholars, spiritual seekers, for centuries, precisely because it just defies easy understanding. It's not straightforward.
So our mission then in this deep dive is to use our source material, excerpts from the Perplexed's Guide to Esoteric Torah, almost like our map, right?
Yeah, exactly. Our map.
This text should help us understand the profound historical context and Maimonides' just unparalleled ingenuity. I mean, he faced an unprecedented crisis.
Yeah.
How do you safeguard the very core, the heart of Judaism's secret teachings in a time of intense existential peril?
And all while meticulously respecting a profound prohibition against ever committing those secrets to writing.
Okay.
That's the crux of it.
It's an incredible balancing act.
And here's where the story just grabs me. Our source reveals this isn't some straightforward philosophical treatise at all, not even close.
Okay.
In fact, it's described as a text riddled with diversions, digressions, and traps.
Traps. Interesting.
Yeah. And Maimonides, quite bafflingly, manages to affirm and deny a thing, sometimes on the very same page, or maybe in the same chapter, or across only different sections of the book.
It sounds deliberately confusing.
It feels utterly counterintuitive, doesn't it? Why would someone create such a seemingly contradictory, almost self-sabotaging work, especially when the stakes were so incredibly high?
Right. What's the strategy there?
Our deep dive today hopefully will uncover the extraordinary circumstances that compelled him to take this approach, and we'll try to reveal the subtle, almost magical genius behind this legendary, perplexing work. So let's set the stage. Our source immediately plunges us into the dramatic circumstances of the 12th century.
Okay.
A period that truly tested the resilience, the very survival of the Jewish people. And we're not talking about just a difficult time. This was an era of immense, almost planetary scale, anti-Jewish persecution.
Planetary scale. That's a strong term.
It reflects the source's emphasis. It wasn't just isolated incidents. This was widespread, relentless assault on Jewish communities across vast geographies.
What's truly striking here is that sheer global scale of the threat, as you said. Maimonides himself, he was born shortly after the First Crusade erupted, and he lived through the next two.
Right, through them.
The source really underscores that no disaster of such magnitude had hit the Jews before. This wasn't just hardship, it was an existential threat, not just to individuals, but to the whole fabric of their identity, their continuity as a people. And think about his native Andalusia, what's now Spain. While maybe geographically buffered a bit from the direct fighting of the Crusades in the Holy Land, the Jews there faced a stark, brutal choice from the fanatic Almohad rulers who swept through.
A forced choice.
Exactly. Convert to Islam or be exiled. I mean, that's less a choice and more a sentence, isn't it? Spiritual and physical annihilation.
Imagine being forced to abandon your deepest beliefs or lose your home, your community, everything you know.
It's a chilling reality, absolutely.
So when this kind of intense pressure, this global-scale persecution is bearing down, what does that actually mean for the very fabric of Judaism itself? How did this translate into an existential crisis, not just physically, but for their traditions, their way of life, their spiritual core?
Well, it sounds like the very soul of their practice was under threat, as you put it.
It does.
And this brings us to a crucial point about survival, which goes far beyond just physical endurance. Think about it like Holocaust survivors centuries later. The Jews of the 12th century were forced to grapple with the profound meaning of their trials.
The why.
The why, exactly. They had to ask fundamental questions about divine justice, about the place of divine intervention in such overwhelming, prolonged suffering. Maimonides, according to our source, became absolutely convinced that Judaism was in danger of disappearing insofar as the material conditions for its survival could no longer be assured.
Wow. Not just worried about individuals, but the whole future.
Precisely. He was deeply concerned about the very possibility of Jewish life continuing, of Jewish knowledge being passed down. The entire infrastructure of their learning, their spiritual guidance, their tradition was quite literally crumbling around them.
Our source makes it unequivocally clear that Judaism's existence depends fundamentally on the study and transmission of the Torah, more precisely of the Talmud. Now, for you listening, if you're less familiar, the Talmud isn't just one book.
No, it's monumental.
It's a huge, complex body of religious law, ethics, philosophy, history, built up over centuries. So if your very survival hinges on studying and transmitting this vast, intricate knowledge, what happens when you can't rely on the usual methods?
Yeah, that's the critical problem. The core issue was the catastrophic inability to maintain the Talmudic schools.
The academies.
These institutions weren't just places of learning. They were the lifeblood of Jewish intellectual and spiritual continuity, absolutely crucial for the rigorous study, the debate, the accurate transmission of the Talmud.
But they needed stability.
They required a minimum of political stability, a basic level of societal order that was simply, as the source says, impossible to achieve in the midst of the persecutions of the time.
So picture that. Your academies, your libraries, your study centers constantly under siege, disrupted, or just utterly destroyed.
Yeah.
How do you maintain a consistent, systematic transmission of such complex knowledge when the very places dedicated to it are collapsing?
You can't. The traditional system, honed over generations, was just breaking down.
So the normal conduits, these established schools, these steady environments, they were failing. Widespread destruction. It sounds like a slow-motion catastrophe for Jewish learning.
It really was.
What was Maimonides' immediate practical response to this looming crisis, this threat to the very essence of Judaism?
What's fascinating is how strategic, how far-sighted his response was. This intensification of persecution, truly global, meant his major works were designed to ensure the essentials of the Talmud to be transmitted even in the absence of Talmudic schools.
So, a way to bypass the need for the physical schools.
Exactly. It wasn't just a stopgap measure. It was a desperate but incredibly brilliant long-term strategy. He saw that if the institutions disappeared, the knowledge itself had to become portable, resilient.
He was ready for the future.
Absolutely. Creating tools to bypass the physical destruction of learning institutions and still keep the tradition alive for generations to come. He aimed to make the foundational legal core accessible even when the traditional communal methods were just no longer viable.
Now, the very name oral Torah suggests, pretty strongly, it wasn't meant to be written down initially.
Inherently, yes.
Our source highlights a specific prohibition from the Babylonian Talmud that really captures this. It is forbidden to repeat by heart what is written in the Torah, and it is forbidden to read what one has learned orally.
That's a remarkably strict rule, almost counterintuitive, isn't it, for a tradition so based on learning and transmission?
It is. So if it was so strictly forbidden, how on earth did this oral Torah end up in writing in the first place? It seems like a direct contradiction.
Well, this is a truly pivotal point, and it speaks to the extraordinary, often painful pressures faced by the ancient sages. It was only due to what our source calls reasons of force majeure.
Force majeure, like overwhelming circumstances.
Exactly. Extraordinary, compelling circumstances entirely beyond their control. Only then did they take the drastic, almost unthinkable step of fixing the oral tradition in writing.
So they were facing a terrible dilemma.
An agonizing one, either letting this tradition disappear or of committing the transgression of putting it in writing. Faced with that existential threat, the choice, while deeply difficult, became clear.
Preserve it, even if it means breaking a rule.
They reluctantly chose the latter, and they were guided by this profound pragmatic principle. It is better for one letter of the Torah to be violated than for the whole Torah to be forgotten.
Wow, that principle just underscores the gravity, the direness of the circumstances.
Absolutely. It wasn't a choice called lightly. It was a desperate act, born out of the necessity for the tradition's sheer survival. They were essentially sacrificing a part of the law to save the whole thing.
That's a profound compromise, then. A testament to their commitment to preserving the tradition, even if it meant bending foundational rules. What were these force majeure moments? These specific historical instances so cataclysmic they led to such foundational changes, altering how the Torah was transmitted forever.
The source points to two key historical instances where this principle was applied, leading to monumental shifts. The first was the fixation of the Mishnah.
The Mishnah, right?
Yeah.
The core of the Talmud.
Exactly. It's foundational legal text. This was committed to writing by Rabbi Judah the Prince in the 2nd century CE. And significantly, this happened specifically after the devastating defeat of Bar Kokhba's rebellion against Hadrian's Rome.
So after a major catastrophe.
A major catastrophe. The widespread destruction, the scattering of communities, the systematic persecution. It meant the oral tradition, which relied on stable schools and communities, was truly at risk of being lost.
Makes sense. And the second instance?
Centuries later, the Gemara, which is the extensive commentaries, debates, and elaborations around the Mishnah, was also fixed in writing.
Okay.
This happened about 3 centuries after the Mishnah through the efforts of Rav Ashi, Ravina, and Ravina II. And again, it was during a period of fierce persecutions, this time by Sassanid kings against the Jewish communities in Babylonia.
So another period of intense danger.
Exactly. In both cases, the act of writing down what was meant to remain oral was a direct, desperate response to severe, life-threatening persecution that jeopardized the tradition's continuity. These weren't just intellectual choices, they were survival mechanisms.
So fast forward centuries later, the Talmud is written down, but Maimonides, living through his own era of immense persecution, still found the situation so dire that teaching and transmitting it was still, in his words, compromised.
Right. It seems having it written wasn't enough if the schools were crumbling and the ability to study it in depth was still under threat.
So what was his solution for this immediate pressing problem, this persistent challenge to learning?
His solution was the creation of the Mishneh Torah.
The Mishneh Torah, okay.
Our source describes this monumental work as the first exhaustive and systematized collection of all the halashats. Halashat being, for you listening, Jewish laws.
And this wasn't just another legal code.
No, it was truly unprecedented. Imagine an entire legal system, meticulously organized, presented clearly, accessibly, without all the complex debates and discussions you find in the Talmud itself.
Streamlined.
Very streamlined, comprehensive, and accessible. A direct, strategic response to the historical crisis. He wanted to provide a clear, unified, practical guide to Jewish law for everyone, especially when traditional learning structures were failing and the Talmud was becoming harder to navigate without expert guidance.
The sort of resilient legal handbook.
Precisely. Designed for resilience and wide distribution.
And this is where Maimonides' strategic genius, and maybe his willingness to make tough choices, really comes into focus. Our source notes he achieved this incredible conciseness in the Mishneh Torah, but at a significant price. The exclusion of all the halakhic debates and the Agadoth of the Talmud.
Right.
What exactly did he leave out by doing that? And why is that such a profound, significant editorial decision?
This exclusion is absolutely key to understanding Maimonides' larger project. The halakhic debates he excluded contain the intricate jurisprudences, the detailed rulings, and crucially, the extensive arguments, the varying opinions that led to those rulings.
The back and forth.
The back and forth, the legal reasoning. But the Agadoth, which he also intentionally omitted, those are the narrative, non-legal parts of the Talmud.
The stories, the philosophy.
Exactly. Think of them not just as stories, but as the philosophical underpinnings, the ethical parables, the moral lessons, the deep spiritual insights that give the laws their soul, their purpose.
So without them?
Without them, you might know what to do the practical application of the law, but not why it profoundly matters. Its ultimate meaning, its broader context in Jewish thought.
So the Mishneh Torah gives the what?
It provides the what, a clear guide to observance, but he intentionally, conspicuously omitted the why, the ultimate meaning, the deep reasoning behind the laws. And this wasn't an oversight.
No, it sounds very deliberate.
It was a strategic omission, and it sets the stage for something else entirely.
Okay, so if the Mishneh Torah gave us the what, the practical laws, and Maimonides intentionally left out the why, the deep meaning, then the logical next step, it feels like, would have been for him to compose a complementary work.
Right, like a collection of Agadoth.
Exactly. A synthetic collection of Agadoth. That would provide the missing spiritual and philosophical context, wouldn't it? Complete the picture.
Yeah.
But he didn't do that. Why not? What stopped him from providing that crucial why?
And the reason is profoundly significant. It leads us right to the heart of this deep dive. Our source states unequivocally that he could not do it, for the law forbids the publication and writing down of the core of this tradition.
So there's another layer of prohibition.
A much deeper, more sensitive layer. This isn't just any tradition. This is the secret Torah, a distinct, highly guarded body of knowledge.
The secret Torah, what does that consist of?
Specifically, Two major, highly esoteric components: the work of creation, Masa Bereshit, and the design of the chariot, Masa Merkava. This was the knowledge, the absolute core of the why, that simply could not be made public, especially in writing, without committing a severe violation of sacred law.
Okay, the work of creation, the design of the chariot. What exactly is this secret Torah? Why is it so incredibly guarded? What makes it fundamentally different from the oral Torah that eventually became the written Talmud?
It's a critical distinction. In addition to the exoteric, the public oral Torah, which became the written Talmud due to persecution, there exists this esoteric, secret oral Torah.
Esoteric, meaning hidden, inner.
Exactly. And this teaching, our source says, can only be transmitted privately by a teacher to a single student at a time and taking into account a number of restrictions. It is absolutely not for general consumption.
One-on-one. Very restricted.
Very restricted. And crucially, this esoteric teaching is the very heart of Agada. It's the meaning and spiritual depth Maimonides omitted from the Mishnah Torah. It contains the ultimate meaning and raison d'etre of the entire system of mitzvot expounded in the Mishnah Torah.
So it's the soul of the law.
It's the soul of the law. While the Mishnah Torah tells you how to observe, the secret Torah provides the why, the deep spiritual, mystical, philosophical understanding underpinning every commandment.
And publicizing this was seen as dangerous.
Yes, potentially leading to severe misinterpretations, spiritual danger for the unprepared, or even diminishing its sacred power. It's potent stuff.
So Maimonides finds himself in a truly impossible situation here, a real bind.
A true Gordian knot.
On one hand, he cannot, under any circumstances, publish this secret Torah without committing a serious violation of sacred law. On the other, he faces the devastating prospect that he cannot let this secret teaching disappear because he deems it essential for the perpetuation of Judaism in his time of crisis.
It's a profound paradox. How do you preserve something vital by letting it vanish? Or how do you violate a sacred law to ensure its survival?
How do you violate the law to preserve it?
This is where the profound tension of Maimonides' genius really comes into play. He's faced with this true dilemma: the explicit instruction versus the existential imperative. Our source tells us he would solve this dilemma by finding a way to transmit this tradition while meticulously respecting the prohibition of its transmission.
So not breaking the rules, but innovating around them.
Exactly, with unparalleled intellectual and spiritual genius. And the result, of course, is the Guide of the Perplexed, this atypical and unclassifiable great work of genius we're exploring. It's a testament to creative problem solving under extreme duress.
It's clear he had to navigate an incredibly delicate path. Our source points to specific ancient rules for transmitting this secret knowledge, rules found in foundational texts like Mishnah Haggadah and its Gemara.
Yes.
What exactly do these revered texts say about how this teaching should occur, especially if it's so sensitive? This must have been the roadmap for his solution.
Indeed, these ancient texts provided the precise framework. The Mishnah Haggadah 2.1 is incredibly explicit about the restrictions and the method. It states, "One may not expound the work of creation before two or more individuals, nor may one expound by oneself the design of the divine chariot, unless he is wise and understands most matters on his own."
Wow. So very strict limitations on audience size and capability.
Absolutely. It's not just about secrecy. It's about ensuring the spiritual safety and intellectual capacity of the recipient. It means this knowledge must be addressed to a single person worthy of receiving it and capable of understanding by itself.
Capable of understanding by itself. That's interesting.
So that the teacher will proceed by insinuations and will communicate only the main lines, leaving it to the pupil to complete it.
Insinuations. Only the main lines.
Exactly. This method is absolutely critical for understanding Maimonides' solution in the guide. The teacher doesn't hand over a complete doctrine. They provide subtle clues, hints, fragmented insights.
Like breadcrumbs.
Like breadcrumbs. And the student, through their own profound wisdom, diligent effort, spiritual maturity, must then put the pieces together. They complete the understanding for themselves.
So it's a collaborative discovery, a personal journey, not just a lecture.
Precisely. An intellectual and spiritual insight rather than a direct download of information.
Okay, so if I'm getting this right, Maimonides had to transmit a truly secret teaching strictly to a single person using only insinuations, hints, while also making it accessible enough to preserve it more broadly for the future, all without actually publishing it openly.
Yes, it sounds impossible, doesn't it?
It sounds like a literary magic trick. And this is where the Guide of the Perplexed comes in. this atypical and unclassifiable great work of genius. How on earth did he satisfy that incredibly specific single-person commandment, making a published book feel like a private conversation?
He achieved this through a masterstroke of literary design. He wrote the guide in a pseudo-epistolary style.
Pseudo-epistolary, like letters.
Exactly, structured like a deeply personal letter or a series of letters from a teacher to a student. In the very dedication, Maimonides himself explains this. He says the guide is specifically addressed to only one person, a disciple of merit who had to go into exile to escape persecution.
Ah, so he names a specific recipient, even if symbolically.
Precisely. It's not presented as a general treatise for the masses. It's meticulously crafted as a deeply personal conversation, a private dialogue. He even uses the Arabic term maqala, which, while it can mean treatise, primarily signifies opinion, story, or conversation.
So it's framed as a conversation.
Fundamentally, yes. A substitute for a face-to-face conversation, an intimate intellectual exchange. This way, even though it exists as a written book, its intent, its structure, its address mimic the permissible, private, single-student transmission method. It's a brilliant way to make a public document behave like a private one.
But our source argues that just using this style, this pseudo-letter format, wasn't enough to fully bypass the prohibition against making secret teaching truly public.
It wasn't quite sufficient on its own, no.
And here's where the intellectual acrobatics get truly fascinating. Maimonides, the source tells us, doesn't actually make it public because, get this, everything he affirms or insinuates in one part of the work, he contradicts it elsewhere, sometimes on the same page, sometimes in another chapter or in another section.
Ah, the contradictions.
The contradictions. So what does this all mean? How does contradicting yourself, often so glaringly, actually allow you to transmit secret knowledge without actually transmitting it? It's mind-boggling.
This is where his genius for strategic communication just takes breath away. It's unparalleled intellectual cunning. The source states very precisely, this amounts to teaching nothing about the secret Torah, since, according to logic, whoever affirms and denies a thing has said nothing about the thing in question.
Okay, unpack that. Affirming and denying means saying nothing.
Think about it logically. If I tell you the universe is eternal, and then immediately, or a few pages later, I say the universe was created in time, and I don't clearly state which one I actually believe, what have I definitively taught you?
Nothing solid, just two opposing ideas.
Exactly. He effectively creates a logical nullification, a paradox, a deliberate intellectual maze. He leaves it, as the source says, up to the reader to choose which is the correct one. Or, more accurately, to discern the deeper truth through their own understanding, guided by the subtle hints, the insinuations he provides.
So he's not broadcasting the truth.
No. He's laying out incredibly clever breadcrumbs, but only for those who are worthy and astute enough, the intended reader, that solitary, capable student, to follow them to the hidden destination. He respects the letter of the prohibition while still providing the necessary clues.
That's an incredible level of intellectual, well, deception maybe, but for the highest spiritual purpose.
You could frame it that way. Strategic obfuscation, perhaps.
Beyond these internal contradictions, this logical nullification, what other tactics did Maimonides employ to ensure only the intended readers got the true meaning?
Yeah.
And maybe even to actively mislead or discourage others?
He developed several additional tactics in order to discourage readers who are not targeted by his teaching.
Like what?
These could range from highly abstract, dense philosophical discussions that would frankly bore or overwhelm an unprepared reader.
Right, make it hard work.
To intricate logical arguments that seem to lead nowhere conclusive for the casual observer. And if those initial discouragements failed, he would, quite remarkably, actively put them on the wrong track.
Misdirect them.
Yes, by letting them believe that they are reading a kind of theological, philosophical treatise which seeks to justify Judaism within the framework of Aristotelian reason.
So make them think it's just standard philosophy.
Exactly. Imagine picking up the book, expecting a straightforward argument, and instead finding yourself in the sprawling maze of contradictions, seemingly aimless digressions, philosophical debates that don't seem to resolve.
It sounds exhausting if you're not prepared for it.
It does. This makes the guide a meticulous work where nothing is left to chance, and which is nevertheless riddled with diversions, digressions, traps of all kinds, and where the main subject, the secret Torah, is expounded in a disguised, disorderly, and scattered manner.
Disorderly and scattered. On purpose.
On purpose. It is not a linear argument. It's a meticulously constructed labyrinth, designed not only to protect its core, but also to reveal it only to those with the intellectual fortitude, the spiritual wisdom, and the sheer determination to navigate its complexities. The casual reader gets philosophy, maybe impressive philosophy, but the true seeker, the perplexed one, finds the hidden path.
It makes you wonder then, why go to all this monumental effort, such painstaking work, if it's ultimately destined to be little understood by most people?
Right.
Unlike the Mishnah Torah, which was for everyone, young, old, smart, or not, because its knowledge is essential for practical observance, our source explicitly says the reading of the guide is not essential to the practice of Judaism.
A key distinction.
So if it's not for general consumption, not for daily practice, who is it for? Who are these elite intended readers capable of cracking Maimonides' code?
The guide is intended only for the perplexed, capable of understanding for themselves.
The perplexed, capable of understanding for themselves.
This is profoundly important. It's specifically for the self-taught. For those who possess an inherent intellectual curiosity, a deep spiritual drive, and the capacity to grapple with profound, often unsettling questions independently.
People wrestling with big ideas.
Exactly, and the very structure of the guide facilitates this. The study allows for an intensely individual dialogue with Maimonides, almost as if he's addressing you, the specific struggling reader. Through its contradictions and hints, he provides elements to maintain the flame of Judaism, despite the worst conditions of doubt and perplexity.
So it's for those on the edge, perhaps, grappling with doubt.
Precisely. Those grappling with deep philosophical questions, those maybe on the brink of losing faith due to intellectual challenges or profound existential uncertainty. He offers them a highly personal, solitary path to reaffirmation and deeper understanding, not through explicit answers, but through the very act of their own struggle. It's about individual, spiritual, and intellectual survival.
That's a crucial clarification. Okay, so if it's not essential for practical observance, how can it simultaneously be essential for the survival of Judaism, especially under those certain historical conditions Maimonides lived through? That sounds contradictory.
It does seem paradoxical at first glance, doesn't it?
What is it about this hidden message that Maimonides believed was so vital for the continuity of the entire tradition?
This is where we uncover the deepest layer. Looking at the bigger picture, the source argues that the fundamental lesson of the secret Torah, the very heart of the guide's hidden message, is the unconditional love that the Jew must devote to the eternal.
Unconditional love.
And not just any love. It's explicitly unconditional, meaning without expecting any reward, knowing that there is no reward to be expected.
Wow. Love without expecting anything back.
Anything. This is a truly radical concept, especially for its time. It moves way beyond a transactional relationship with the divine. Obey and be rewarded, transgress and be punished.
Right. The standard model, perhaps.
It's this deep, inherent, utterly unrewarded love that Maimonides believes is the ultimate bedrock for Judaism's survival, particularly when external conditions offer little comfort, little proof, or visible divine intervention. It's the inner resilience, the spiritual fortitude that allows faith to persist even when everything else seems to fail.
A love that transcends circumstances.
Exactly.
That's truly profound and radical, as you say.
Yeah.
Unconditional love, no expectation of reward, not even maybe explicit divine presence.
Mm-hmm.
What's so revolutionary about it? And how does it tie into those two components of the secret Torah? The work of creation and the design of the chariot.
Well, it's radical precisely because it intentionally transcends the need for empirical evidence or philosophical proofs or even historical reassurance. Think about how this plays out with those components.
Okay.
The esoteric teaching of the work of creation, for example, affirms this love even if nothing in the knowledge of nature leads one to believe that there was a creation of the world.
Wait, even if science or philosophy casts doubt on creation?
Even then, this love persists. It's not dependent on intellectual certainty about cosmology.
Okay. And the other part, the chariot.
Similarly, the esoteric teaching of the design of the chariot affirms this love even if nothing in the knowledge of history and in personal experience leads to belief in divine providence.
Even if history looks chaotic and unjust.
Exactly. And this is so poignant in Maimonides' era of persecution. Even if history seems devoid of clear divine intervention, even if your own life offers no clear signs of God's guiding hand, this love remains unwavering.
It's a devotion that stands firm even when God seems silent or absent.
Precisely. It transcends the need for proof in the world around you.
So if we put all this together, What's the ultimate message about faith, devotion, and doubt that Maimonides is conveying through this incredibly complex, hidden system? It sounds like genuine faith isn't about rigid proofs.
Exactly. It raises a truly profound question, almost a challenge. Not believing that the eternal created the world and Parador, not believing that the eternal intervenes in history would not be a sufficient reason not to love him.
That is revolutionary. Your love isn't contingent on believing specific things happened or are happening.
It suggests a form of devotion that transcends traditional proofs, philosophical arguments, or even direct experience of intervention. It's a love that exists independently of the how or why of the universe or the what of history. Your faith isn't contingent on God acting as you expect or proving himself.
So the guide facilitates this discovery.
Through its secret, multi-layered nature, yes. It allows for a personal and private discovery of this deeper, more resilient foundation for Judaism. It shifts faith from being about external facts or a contract to an internal, unconditional commitment of the heart and soul. It's a liberation.
Our source beautifully describes the insights from the guide as lights, not those of the encyclopedia, but rather those of Hanukkah. That's such a lovely analogy.
It really is evocative, isn't it?
What's the significance of that comparison, connecting this deep, hidden knowledge to Hanukkah lights?
The analogy is just perfect for capturing the nature of this esoteric knowledge. Hanukkah lights traditionally are meant to be contemplated, which should not have a practical use.
Right, you don't use them for ordinary tasks.
Exactly. You light them, you look at them, you reflect on their meaning, their beauty, but you don't use them to read by or light your way or cook. They're for illumination, inspiration, not utility.
Okay, I see the connection.
The secret Torah's knowledge, similarly, could not be used even if one wanted to. It doesn't give you new legal rulings or practical instructions or even new philosophical arguments for public debate.
It's not practical knowledge.
No, it's knowledge for inner understanding, for spiritual illumination, for fostering that deep, personal, unconditional connection to the eternal we've discussed. It's about profound insight that resonates within your soul, rather than knowledge applied to external action. It's about a state of being, not a checklist of doing.
Knowledge for its own sake almost, for inner illumination.
Precisely, it speaks to the heart, not just the mind.
Now, given all these philosophical discussions, the labyrinthine structure, the apparent contradictions, it's maybe understandable that some readers over the centuries have thought, wait, was Maimonides actually an atheist?
Right, or at least a radical skeptic hiding it.
Exactly, hiding behind a religious veneer. But our source strongly disagrees with that. How do they refute it? And what's the surprising, almost humorous analogy they use?
They refute it quite definitively. The source asserts that, for Maimonides himself, the question of the existence of God was not an issue.
It wasn't even a question for him.
Apparently not. He wasn't grappling with whether God existed. His inquiry was far more nuanced. It was about the nature of the relationship with and understanding of the divine.
Okay, and the analogy.
To illustrate this, they use this delightful, incredibly clever analogy from Billy Wilder's classic film, Some Like It Hot. You know the end scene.
Vaguely, with the boat.
Yes. They reframe it, describing the relationship between Maimonides as Osgood and God as Daphne. When God, as Daphne says frustratedly, "You don't understand, Maimonides, I don't exist," Maimonides, as Osgood, responds with that perfect deadpan timing, "Well, nobody's perfect."
Oh, that's brilliant.
Isn't it? It's playful, but profoundly insightful. It highlights that Maimonides' inquiry wasn't about God's factual existence. He took that as a given. It was about the profound, often mysterious, sometimes counterintuitive nature of the relationship. A relationship that can transcend conventional understanding or even proof.
So God's existence wasn't the point. The relationship was. Even if that relationship included, well, paradoxes or things that didn't fit neatly.
Exactly. It shows his unique perspective, that he could conceptualize devotion in such a non-literal, unprovable, yet deeply held way. He was exploring the boundaries of belief, not its basic foundations.
That completely reframes how we should view his whole philosophical project.
Sure.
So if he wasn't an atheist, not just a rationalist philosopher in the usual sense, what was Maimonides truly? Beneath all these layers, these deliberate disguises, what was his fundamental identity?
This brings us to a really fascinating conclusion about him. Our source describes him, quite strikingly, as a mystic who makes you believe he is a rationalist.
Okay.
A Platonist who makes you think he is an Aristotelian. A rabbi who makes you assume he's a philosopher.
Wow. A master of masks.
A master of wearing multiple masks, deliberately shifting his intellectual persona, employing different philosophical languages, all to achieve his extraordinary, multifaceted goal.
And these weren't contradictions within him.
The source suggests not contradictions of belief, but calculated strategies of communication. He used the language of rigorous philosophy, of strict logic, of nuanced rabbinic law, all to serve a deeper esoteric purpose. Preserve profound wisdom while maintaining its secrecy, ensuring it reached only those prepared.
So a master of conveying truth through deliberate misdirection.
Precisely. A complex, multi-layered genius who ensured only the truly prepared could find the hidden core. He understood that sometimes the most profound truths are best communicated in whispers and riddles, not shouted from the rooftops.
We've just taken a truly fascinating journey, haven't we? It feels like we've peeled back layers of an incredible historical and intellectual puzzle.
Absolutely.
We've seen how Maimonides, faced with the potential extinction of Judaism's deepest, most secret traditions in this time of planetary scale persecution, crafted this masterpiece that just defies easy categorization.
The guide for the perplexed, not just a book, as you said earlier.
No, a complex, multi-layered puzzle, meticulously designed to transmit forbidden knowledge to a select few, without ever truly publishing it in a way that would violate those ancient prohibitions.
Indeed. And he achieved this astonishing feat by writing in that pseudo-epistolary style, like he was addressing just one worthy disciple.
Right, creating that intimacy.
And by strategically affirming and denying concepts, creating that logical nullification. So, strictly speaking, he taught nothing definitively to the uninitiated.
And setting those traps we talked about.
Exactly. Deliberately setting traps for the casual reader, diverting them down philosophical rabbit holes, while the true esoteric message remained hidden in plain sight, but only for the self-taught and perplexed.
And the profound core message, hidden inside all that complexity,
Was about that unconditional love for the eternal. A deep, unwavering devotion that stood firm even when faced with philosophical doubt about creation or the apparent absence of divine providence in history.
It was a radical redefinition of faith, really, designed for the most trying of times.
Absolutely. Resilience built from within.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Maimonides' ingenious methods, what truly stands out to you from this incredible story of intellectual and spiritual devotion? Maimonides gave us these lights to be contemplated, which should not have a practical use.
Those Hanukkah lights.
Exactly. If the ultimate purpose of this profound hidden knowledge isn't practical application, isn't legal observance, but rather a deepening of personal, unconditional love and understanding, what does that imply about the nature of knowledge itself?
That's a deep question.
And maybe for you listening, how might we seek out similar lights in our own lives? Profound insights, beautiful truths, moments of deep understanding, things that are meant simply for contemplation, for their inherent beauty, for their power to illuminate our inner world, rather than for immediate utility or tangible gain.
Perhaps some knowledge really is meant just to be experienced, to change us internally, not necessarily to be applied externally.
Something to think about. Perhaps some lights are just meant to glow,